Welcome to the Dragon's Den. I'm your venerable host Orochi, and today we are going to talk about classes in Pathfinder 2 and do a nice little tier ranking on what class is most useful. There's been a lot of talk on the forums and such about how to tier rank classes, as in all previous editions for D&D, Pathfinder 1, 3rd edition, 4th edition, and I'm probably sure it's happened in 5th edition. Most of the classes are just ranked by how much damage you can do, because that is the most single-minded metric that anyone can really boil things down to. And I still believe that even in Pathfinder 2, that is the most useful metric, because everything else your character might be able to do probably won't save your life. Whereas doing damage, killing the enemies, is going to save your life. Therefore, it is the most important thing to do. But depending upon what kind of game you're in, it might not be the most important thing you can do for your group. And so this is more based on what does the class's mechanics bring to the table for any group. There's going to be some classes which are only good in specific groups that are built around them, and those are going to rank pretty low, whereas other classes are just, you slap them into any composition and they're going to shine. And those are the classes that are going to rank higher. So we're going to start off here and start right down the list. First is going to be Alchemist, which I'm going to put middle of the road. The Alchemist is I'm not going to say poorly designed class, but it is not effective. You have to build around an Alchemist to get the most out of it, but even so, they can always provide you a buff that is at least 1 point better than what you should automatically have if given the correct equipment. So your weapon buff, your armor buff, and your gear buff that will give you plus to all of your skill rolls, they can give you one better than the normal magical gear that you would have for your level. And a +1 is not insignificant, but if that's the only thing you're trying to get out of an alchemist, that's not enough for a party slot. So they can also do a little bit of healing. They waste an unfathomable amount of action economy to get this healing done properly, but they can provide healing. And in a more situational use than what clerics or spellcasters can do, because they're giving you potions, and you can use the potion on your own whenever you want. Most of the time, that's not going to be a viable option at all, because you need a free hand, which you're probably not going to have unless you're a caster or specific build that has hands free. And so there's just a lot of situations where Alchemist is not useful. The one saving grace for them is that they can use bombs. Any alchemist can use bombs. You don't have to be a bomber specific to be able to use bombs. And then you can specifically target monster weaknesses, which can be an amazingly powerful thing, but only in certain situations where monsters have a specific weakness that you identify and then can use. So as a class, they can be good without a party built around them, but they can excel if they can help each party member. So I'm going to put them in the middle. And then Barbarian, bam. Barbarian, they're the king of damage. Damage is the most important thing. They just kill stuff. That's what they do. In a party not built around a barbarian, they can have a harder time if you're just like a bunch of squishies and you're trying to have your barbarian be your like frontline tank. They're gonna have a hard time at that because they're not excellent at tanking. But they're gonna give you so much extra damage that they're gonna neutralize threats, and that's what combat is all about: neutralizing threats as fast as possible. And the barbarian is great at that. Bard's going to go up here as well, because despite the fact that they're casters, and as we have seen in my past few videos, casters are not fantastic in a lot of situations, bards were specifically designed with a one-action buff that almost every party can use. So straight out of the gate, at level 1, a bard can always buff your party and then cast whatever other spells they want, and you're just bringing them along for that +1. They can either do, Inspire Competence or Dirge of Doom later on, and they always bring some sort of buff or debuff to the table, as well as all of full casting, and then they can also sort of specialize in doing, mediocre lore and a bunch of other not significant but not insignificant things as well. They bring a lot to the table, especially for a caster. Most other casters, as we go, bring less and less to the table. And Champion. Champion is just, if you don't know what you want to play in a group, or you don't know what the group is, a champion is always the strongest choice. Especially like a paladin if you're going to have other martials in your group. They are just the ultimate backbone of a party, because they are the only defender class in the entire game, and they are pretty much the most well-designed class in Pathfinder 2, because they just have fantastic reactions that feed into their whole role of, they have the best AC, they have good defenses overall, good saves, they're hard to hit because of that AC, and they can get in your face if you're a caster, and they can pick up attack of opportunity. So they just offer so much. There's like, oh, you don't want to screw with them. They might not bring tons of damage, but they can put some threat in, and they're also hard to hit. But if you try to ignore them, then it's going to get worse for you, because they can use their reaction to lower the damage you deal to their friendlies. So everything that a champion has, all of their core mechanics, feed into fulfilling their role as the defender. And Barbarian does that in a lesser way for offense, whereas like there's no other classes besides like these three that really fit into that. All of their mechanics feed into this singular role that they have: damage dealer, caster support, defense. And that's why they are the best classes in the game. And then Cleric. Cleric I'm going to put on A, just because the divine font is really good if you need it. But that's... No, I can't. As much as the divine font is fantastic, I'm going to have to put them at B, because they've got mediocre casting capabilities. So many of their spells require you to be in a campaign where you know that the enemy is evil. And, if you're doing standard issue, if you're running APs and that sort of thing, or a bog standard sort of, hey, we're the good guys, everything we fight must be bad guys, and therefore evil, having no gray area for morality and just doing your standard issue high fantasy kind of stuff, a Cleric could be really good. But they have so many spells that are tied to using your alignment that in any campaign or situation where they can't make use of that, they fall off hard in their capabilities. And it's also like, if you have a champion and a barbarian in your group, you might not need their heals as much, because you've got good damage mitigation and good offense to get rid of threats, so you might not need the healings. Clerics are really good in groups that are missing some really good frontline capabilities or proper damage reduction capabilities, because they have divine font, they have free heals. That's what they're good at, is they're good at free heals. How much you can make use of that is dependent upon your group. So you could easily get into a group where Cleric probably isn't needed that much. But really, heals are almost always needed to feel safe. Because if your group is the kind of group that has the defense and has the offense, and you always just burn the enemy down fast enough, then you won't need a Cleric. But what happens if you come across a situation where, you get CC'd and, your party isn't working up to their potential and somebody starts taking some damage, then it's always just good to have extra free heals. You may or may not be able to accomplish that with other characters, so that's what the Cleric is good for, emergency heals. Then we get into Druid. Where do I want to put Druid? Druid's a bit hard because they fulfill multiple different fantasies. You can be a shapeshifter, you can be an elemental wielder, you can heal some. Like, people in previous editions, Bard has always been the jack of all trades sort of thing. And now that's sort of the Druid's area, where aside from skills, because they don't get any support in skills, but they can do range damage, they can take damage a little bit, they can heal a little bit, they can blast a little bit, they can shapeshift to melee a little bit. Like, Druids can fit into a lot of different parties because they bring at least base level competence in a lot of different things. The problem is, if you put a person who has base level competence in a bunch of different things in a group with people who excel heavily at those things, it's going to make this class look bad. But in the grand scheme of things, these classes are going to make everything else look bad most of the time. So I'll put Druid in A. I've played a Druid to level 20. And even using some things that are on the chopping block to get nerfed, it didn't feel fantastic because I was in a super min-maxed group of heavy hitters. And so it can feel bad when you're just borderline competent at a lot of things and everybody else excels at the stuff that they're doing. But Druids still bring a lot to the table. If you're in a group that doesn't have any S-ranked stuff, then a Druid will probably feel more S-rank. Then we go to Fighter. And I'm going to put Fighter in S because it almost brings the damage a Barbarian does. A well-built Barbarian will just... nothing can compare to a well-built Barbarian. But a well-built Fighter gets close while also having good defense and having more tricks up its sleeve to do, like, knockdown or flat-footed or frightened or, inflict other stuff to make everything better, not only for themselves, but for their party. But you really have to know how to build a fighter to max them out. Where a barbarian is just grab a two-handed weapon, rage, hit stuff, and you're probably going to be outshining everybody else. Gunslinger, I'm going to put an A. Their shtick is that they're a fighter, only they use weapons that are really not conductive to effectiveness. Guns do not work very well. Like, the whole premise of a gun in reality is that they do high amounts of damage in low amounts of time. That's the whole point. That's the reason why guns were first invented, and why, even though the first guns were really, really bad, the technology stuck because it was lower amounts of skill compared to all other range types of damage, and high amounts of damage. Whereas gunslingers in Pathfinder 2 do mediocre amounts of damage, and you have to spend an action to reload them after every fire. So the action economy of a gunslinger is nowhere near that of a fighter, so a fighter will always put out more damage. And they have more defense because they're frontline fighters. But even a fighter that's geared towards ranged combat, which you probably shouldn't ever do because ranged combat is just lower damage by design than melee, gunslingers do have some cool stuff in their toolbox, but they're never going to reach the efficiency of a fighter. But you can also do it at range. And so they have places in groups that need range damage, but it's not going to be fantastic. And that's pretty much all you're going to bring them for, is just that range damage. So if you need a ranged damage dealer, that's probably what you want. Inventor. Where do I want to put Inventor? I've only played like up to level 4 with an Inventor. And looking at all their stuff, like, they have some decent capabilities, some mediocre single damage. They don't have a lot of utility stuff, really, like casting utility or anything. And they specialize sort of in doing area damage, which is generally not a good specialization. If you built a whole group around them where everybody was doing area damage, then they might be able to shine more. But I think probably middle of the road, having extra pets, especially if you choose that specialization with your Inventor, having extra pets on the field is always great at low levels. But otherwise, they're super cool, but effective-wise, maybe not great. Investigator is all theme, but you really, really need to have a lot of system knowledge to get the most out of them. If you want it just for the skill monkey, then you're going to go rogue. Basically, you're choosing an investigator specifically because you want that sort of a campaign where, you go hard in on getting clues on thing and doing research on stuff, and that's a whole campaign theme. And if you don't have a GM who's willing to even indulge you a little bit on supporting that theme, even if it isn't the big overarching theme of your whole campaign, then you're probably not going to get a whole lot out of the investigator. But skill monkeys, there's only 2 of them in the game so far, and that's a huge boon to any group. But I don't think they fit into every group very effectively. Magus. I think Magus is sort of in the same boat, but they get decent level of spells that they can use. And they can also use wands and everything to get more utility out. And they do good damage as long as you can figure out decent ways to sustain that damage. But a Starlight Span and, the top tier Magus builds will probably be more A tier. They could fit into a lot more groups, especially as your range damage instead of like a gunslinger or whatever. But I think most of the time you're going to want to build a group not entirely around the Magus, but there's going to be a large number of groups where Magus just won't be able to shine in those groups. Whereas if you're in a group with a champion or something, the Magus will be able to shine more. And if you don't have like a lot of big damage dealers, then the Magus would be able to shine as well. But they just don't bring a whole lot to a group setting. It's like they do magical damage, and they have some good spells, and that's kind of it. That's their entire wheelhouse. Monk. I think I'm going to put monks in A, because monks are only slightly more damage than champion. They're some of the lowest damage marshals in the game, but they bring so much utility to the group. The problem is you have to be able to use it. Like, they have speed, but if you're not in a group that can skirmish, then them being able to skirmish does not help your group at all. They can do different styles, you can specialize in CC, and they're decent straight out of the box for any group, but to really get the most out of a monk, you're gonna want to make sure that your group can capitalize on the things you can do. A lot of that is the same for the fighter, but the fighter just has +2 to hit and good defense on top of that. Whereas the monk can have like the second highest defense in the game, but it's also like by raw, monks can use shields and you can raise a shield. But give me one person who can find a picture or art or some story somewhere, some myth or anything anywhere that supports the idea that a martial brawling monk-esque character uses a shield. Like, that's just antithesis to what the common trope of a martial artist is. So it sort of feels bad, but it works in the rules, and so a monk with a shield is almost a defender, and they can also skirmish a bunch, so they're really cool. They've got multiple things that they can bring to the party, but you've got to make sure that the party fits what you're bringing. So they're good overall, but they can also shine more when in a group that works with what they're bringing. Oracle. You put oracles here. Like, they've got some really cool stuff going on, but they're divine casters. The divine list is kind of mediocre. In the same way with clerics, that it's alignment-based damage stuff, and so you really need to be in a campaign and in a group that's going to be able to maximize your effectiveness and minimize your weaknesses to be able to do well as an oracle. Being thrown into any random group could be detrimental for you. Rangers. I've always loved Rangers, and it feels like you get a lot of choices of what to build with Rangers in Pathfinder 2, but I don't feel like they're effective. Like, they're not super good at anything. You can build Rangers to do range damage, which is cool, but you could do the same thing with a fighter. So what else is a Ranger bringing to the group? It's like, well, you can sort of bring identification stuff with you because they have monster identification abilities and feats you can pick up, but Witch or Wizard are going to be better at that, and actually a Cleric might be better at doing nature stuff, especially if they're a nature Cleric. Like, a lot of the things the Ranger brings are just mediocre. They're a great backup character, and you can do some really cool things with them, but to just throw them into any group, I don't feel like they're going to fit. Because the Ranger, probably more than a lot of other stuff here, has a very specific theme, and you really need to lean into that theme to be effective. You're a scout, you're sneaky, you go through wilderness areas, you are primarily a ranged combatant. Those are the kinds of things that a ranger can excel at, but if you don't have support from a group, there's other classes who can be as effective as that. And like, you can be slightly better dual wielder than a fighter, but the fighter's just straight out better at their first hit than you are, so it kind of equals out. Plus, they've got better defense than you. So, like, every way you build a ranger, there is something else that can be on par with them. And so then, why wouldn't you choose that other thing? Except for flavor reasons. So, the ranger brings cool stuff, and if you build a party around a ranger, well, because of that, because the warden feats are super good, and like, you can reduce the multiple attack penalty for an ally. Putting that on a fighter or barbarian will skyrocket their effectiveness. So you're also you can choose to be a buffer with a ranger. If you're a fury ranger and you choose Warden's Boon and give that to your barbarian or a dual wield fighter, they're just going to go through the stratosphere in how effective their multiple attacks are. So you can build for buffs. You really need to build around a ranger, have the party be able to make use of the ranger's build. Because that's the thing, it's not even all baseline. A baseline ranger is a very, very mediocre class. They do not bring very much to the game at all. They've got the highest perception out of the box, which is good. They can scout, but then you have to build stealth for that so that you can, go around and find stuff and maybe scout for your party. They don't get Trap Finder naturally, I don't believe. So that perception kind of goes to waste a little bit. And just, you can build some good stuff, but the party has to, straight from the beginning, be comprised of characters who can make use of the build the ranger is going for. So it's not fantastic. Rogue. Skill Monkey. They get twice as many skills as everybody else. That alone is just insanely good. But then they also have Backstab, which is straight out of the box, easy to do. The enemy just needs to be flat-footed. So you can flank for that. But a lot of times flanking is really bad for you, because then that puts you in a position where other enemies can flank and gank the crap out of you. So as you level up, you can pick up feats that make flanking a lot easier, like Gang Up. You don't even need to flank the enemy to get the flanking bonus. Somebody else just has to be adjacent to them. That's amazing. And as you go as a rogue, everything you do gets easier and easier because you're picking up tools just to capitalize on doing your thing. But some enemies are immune to precision, so then your damage goes to crap after that. And there's a stealth and all that kind of stuff, they have a lot of cool things they can do, and they are moderately useful to extremely useful straight out of the box. But they also have a little bit of, you can build around them to make them even better. So definitely A, but I don't feel that they ever quite reach S, because the things that they can pick up, just, you can't build like the best squad with a rogue. Like, most of the time the rogue is just there for extra skills, which is kind of unfortunate that that's such a huge amount of what they bring to the table, and it kind of doesn't leave room for a lot of other stuff, which is why the Investigator can kind of be so bad, because mostly they're just bringing 3 extra max rank skills with them, not much else. Sorcerer. I absolutely love the idea of sorcerers. The implementation forever has been terrible. Like, I feel the sorcerer, the class, should be like what the kineticist is kind of going to be. It should be, your magic is inherent. You shouldn't do magic the exact same way a wizard or a cleric or a druid does. Your stuff should just be natural abilities, and you should be able to do them all the time. So it's great that we're getting the kineticist finally that does that sort of thing. But to me, I can't remember who I first saw make the connection. It might have been Nerdarchy. I don't remember. I was watching somebody and they were basically like, sorcerers are basically like the X-Men. They're like mutants in the Marvel universe, where it's like, yeah, their powers are just natural and they just do them. That's what a sorcerer is because it's in their blood. But because they were first created in early editions of D&D, where there was only the one way to cast spells, nobody has ever wanted to deshackle a sorcerer from those roots of just being a wizard, only spontaneous, which I think is terrible. I would rather somebody make a new class that is a spontaneous wizard and make the sorcerer fulfill its destiny, really. Because there's so much cool flavor in the sorcerer that you get your power from your bloodline. Whatever, thing you have such a connection with, and it would be so cool to just be able to bring that bloodline out to become more like your forebearer or whatever, Like, I don't remember if it was an option in 3rd edition, but I remember, a lot of dragon sorcerers would want to take dragon disciple, because then you're like, oh, well, this basically eventually makes me into a half dragon, which is, like what you want to be as a sorcerer, because you're just like, oh, well, yes, if I'm a dragon sorcerer, then I want to have scales and a breath weapon and, strength, be stronger than all other casters and fulfill, more of that legacy of being like a dragon. Or if you're a fiendish kind of sorcerer, you would want to, lean into those, demonic and devil-like powers and stuff, and just really immerse yourself in that sort of storyline. Whereas the sorcerer really doesn't do that. Like, where you get your power from, especially in D&D, is just like a footnote in your background you can make. In Pathfinder 2, you get a smattering of abilities that are tied to it, but it's not a big thing. And I'm like, this should be the biggest part of your character. So for theming, and because you can literally choose any kind of spells, any tradition with spells you want, sorcerers are automatically good to put in slot into any group that needs any sort of casting. It's like, oh, you need a divine caster? Oh, I can do that. Oh, you need a primal caster? Oh, I can do that. So just slotting them into groups is pretty good. And because they're just a full caster, they can do a lot of cool stuff. And they also have a decent amount of ways to steal spells from other traditions. So they can do a lot in a group, really. And they have more spells slots, sort of. So they're decent, but they're not great. Summoner. I adore the Summoner. It is such a cool and interesting class, but you really, really, really need to be able to delve into the mechanics and know how to maximize this class. And you have to realize that it is the most pure Gish in the game right now. A lot of people probably thought the Magus was going to be that, but the Magus spell strikes. That's what it does. It's not a spell casting martial hybrid. It is a spell striking class that also has spell slots, but it's predominantly in melee combat, so then you're not casting spells at that point, because that's generally a bad idea, and they're not fantastic at them. Whereas the summoner, you have your Eidolon, which is your martial component, which you have to understand is exactly as written. There's almost nothing you can do to really min-max that, which is pretty much the biggest weakness of the summoners, that you cannot min-max your Eidolon. Whereas your summoning portion, you can take archetypes, and eventually, hopefully we'll have some good class archetypes, but you can pick up archetypes and extra feats and stuff to min-max your casting capabilities so that you can bring a lot of stuff to the table. Because like a regular standard caster, you can bring wands or a staff or whatever to give you more spells. And indeed, since they are a spontaneous caster, the point of wands and staffs and stuff is to give you more spells that you would not otherwise have. So if you have like 50 wands in your, bag of holding, you literally have all of these spells to choose from at any time. You just have to waste action economy getting to them instead of having them in your head, which for a summoner is great, because that means you can, at the cost of action economy, have the breadth of spells that any other full-blown caster has. You just have to spend money getting the wands for it, while also having a standard issue martial component to your character, because your Eidolon can do really well in combat. So you're better than most other casters, because you also get to choose whatever kind of casting tradition you want. You can be divine, primal, arcane, or occult, so you can do whatever kind of spell list you want. And then all you have to do is take like one other spell casting archetype, and that immediately gives you full access to all of those spells as wands and staffs. So with just one feat dedicated to a multi-class, you can have 2 traditions as that you pick up for all your wands and staffs. So you can get the vast majority of spells as wands and carry them around with you wherever you go, while also having a good, strong martial component. It's not going to be on martial, not as good as any of these classes, and nowhere near as good as these classes, but you've got like a B rank martial component, plus you are also almost as good as a full martial spellcaster. Like, they can bring so much to the table. You just have to figure out how to maximize that usefulness, both in your build and at the table with your tactics, because you're going to be spending action economy pulling these wands out. So it's good to know what you're getting into and what spells you might want in your hands, because that's basically what it is. You bring 2 wands into every combat, then you have your 4 spell slots plus 2 wands at the ready, and then you can pull out more wands as needed. Basically, the summoner is a wand slinger. That's how you should think of every summoner, as a wand slinger, and they immediately become closer to their potential than any other kind of build, in my estimation. Swashbuckler. Oh. As a martial character, they have a minimum amount of effectiveness. They trip on their mechanics really, really hard at low level. I played a swashbuckler up to level 10, and I think being a low-level swashbuckler is incredibly frustrating, especially if you're in a group with an A or S rank class. You're never going to match them in anything they do. Literally anything they do, they're going to be better than you. Martial classes are going to do more damage. They're probably going to have more defense because you're just getting a stupid buckler at best, and you've got medium armor at best, so you're not doing good for defense. Like, literally any class can pick up a shield for +2 AC with one action around, whereas you're limited to bucklers. You eventually get that action for free, but not until higher levels, and even picking up the first level feat that makes it a buckler acts as a regular shield, it's still, all that does is fulfill the fantasy of, oh hey, I've got a little buckler. You really have to know how to maximize that to actually get anything out of it whatsoever. And Swashbuckler is sort of built like a caster, where they get better at higher levels because they start getting crazy feats that do amazingly awesome stuff, whereas spellcasters get awesome spells at higher levels that do crazy awesome stuff. But low-level swashbuckling is just absolutely painful to do. Just their mechanics hamper them so much, and they don't start shedding some of those problems until level 9 at the earliest. So I do not think they're good. And then we have some problems. Witch and Wizard, your two intelligence-based classes. I'm going to straight off say that I hate these classes on the premise that they're prepared casters first and foremost. So if that's not a problem you have, then these would easily be C or B tier classes. But I loathe prepared casters. It serves no purpose. And show me what a prepared caster looks like in any media. Since the 80s, after Vance's book came out, and Vancian casting only exists in Dungeons & Dragons as a really stupid old mechanic that people just won't get rid of for who the fuck knows why, just because it's so ingrained in the game. But show me a movie or a book, a written story, or a myth, or anything that shows Vancian-style casting. Or even, the sort of casting that, 5th edition has, where it's just you have these 4 spells that you can cast, and once they're gone, you're tapped for the day. 5th edition gives you a lot more leeway with stuff, but, spell casting in all media does not have any mechanics. It is all about the plot. The magic is the plot. No matter what story, what universe you're looking at, the magic there just serves to support the story of the plot. No matter if you've got a hard magic system or a soft magic system, it is primarily there to serve the plot and the immersion of whatever world is there. There is no hard mechanics that are just going to immediately say, oh, hey, you cast a couple spells earlier, so you can't do anything now. There's no stories that are written that way, because that's just not good. It's not fun, engaging storytelling to be that way. If you wasted your spells earlier and now you're exhausted, then that would be part of the story. So having mechanics that are hardcore tied to spell slot levels and stuff, it doesn't make any sense. And yes, that also applies to all full casters, but every other full caster on this list brings something else to the table. At least thematically. Sorcerers can bring their blood magic. Oracles have their curses. Clerics have their font. They're not great, but they're all right. Wizards bring their school specializations, which are all garbage. They're all hot friggin' garbage. 5th edition does so much better with their school specializations that it's amazing how bad they are in Pathfinder 2. The only good wizard is a spellblender. A spellblending wizard could actually be amazing. I've never seen one, but looking at the way their mechanics work, you could actually get more high-level spells with a spellblender than any other caster, and that would be amazing. You could feel actually powerful for a longer portion of the day than any other caster. That would be fantastic. But almost every other option that a wizard has for specialty and for a school specialization is really bad, and their feats are terrible. Like, caster feats in general are pretty awful. The Cleric has some great ones. Like, the Cleric, they're passive sort of things where it allows them to, use their divine font to, like, upcast their cure stuff. Like, their checks, like, cure curse, cure blindness, all that kind of stuff, because those are horrible conditions in Pathfinder 2 that even if you take, like, a druid and they have healing, they can't get rid of conditions, because you have to cast anti-condition stuff at a high level to be able to reasonably get rid of stuff, and only the Cleric can invest in ways to do that easily, which is fantastic for them. Oracles have a lot of ways to steal spells, the same as the Sorcerer, so that they can have more spells at the ready. Not more slots, but just more spells known. And, like, the idea that a wizard or a witch could just, like, oh, well, as long as you know what you're going into, you can automatically put spells for your day that are going to be the perfect spells for what you're going up against, Schrodinger's spellbook. As far as I'm concerned, that is not a legitimate way to play the game. I would never allow my players to know everything they're going up against so that they can just construct the perfect defense for it, so that they can solve the problem before even getting into it, because that's bad gameplay. Like, a lot of people are like, yes, you should definitely, be able to scout things out and learn stuff ahead of time. It's like, sure, to a certain degree, but being able to solve the day's problems at the beginning of the day by just choosing the right spells, that feels good for the wizard, and, it might feel good for the group that's like, oh, hey, we just won everything, but for the GM and for the story overall, it's not good. It's just not great. And the witch does the same thing, more or less. The witch has some cooler stuff with it, but it loses spell slots for it. And so both of these classes could do so much better things if their core mechanics, their subclass mechanics, were, like, shot into the stratosphere to be... The witch curses need to be infinitely better than they are. The wizard's specialization and schools need to be so much better than they are, and have feats attached to those things so that they can really bring out that awesomeness. And then I would put them up in C or B. But as is, this is how useful you can be to a group. It's like, for Wizard, it's like you're only going to be useful for your group if your group knows what they're going up against. If you don't, you could very well be absolutely useless. Sorcerer can easily fall into that category, though. Probably easier. Like, if you're in a group like, Abomination Vaults or something where, hey, there's going to be a lot of undead. It's like, oh, yeah, then you're going to want your Cleric. You're going to want your Wizard to be picking anti-undead stuff all the time. Then for those campaigns, those classes are automatically better. But for just slotting into anything, anywhere, I think this is basically how it is. Like, these two classes are supposed to have the most amount of utility, but it really depends on how your gym is running stuff. Because the way I run things, generally I wouldn't give them the benefit of knowing all the stuff they're coming up against. And you don't have enough spell slots in Pathfinder 2 to cover even a vague amount of bases you would want to. So, yeah. Let me know what anybody else thinks of this stuff. If you've made a lot of groups, this isn't how effective they overall or how much. I might do a theming one next. Organize these by how much I like their theme. That might juxtapose this sort of stuff a lot better. But I don't know, like most of these classes have awesome themes, so I don't think that would work out all that well. But yeah, this is, I think, overall how effective these classes are when just thrown into random parties. Or if you're in a random group and you're thinking about your class, start from the top here and then work your way down. If you know exactly what your group is and what they can do, or your group is willing to make classes that can all synergize very well, then, you know, a lot of these classes will do a lot better. And yeah, that's about it. So that's it for now. See you in the next one.